Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Set Prep Slayer. I'm your host, Cameron Scott Kirk. I've been teaching English literacy skills for more than 30 years, and I've picked up a few things along the way that may come in handy for you in trying to improve your SAT score. Today, we're talking about comma splices, and I fear for you if you do not know what a comma splice is. I hope you've heard the term. However, if you haven't, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go through that with you today. Comma splices are evil. They are traps. They are monsters released by the College Board to wreak havoc on your writing and your SAT score. Before we get into comma splices, we need to talk about clauses and phrases. Basically, all English sentences are comprised of clauses. It's how you put them together that is key. Phrases come into play as well. What is the difference between a clause and a phrase? That is something I will explain to you today. So we're looking at clauses and phrases, the difference between them, and a nasty little thing called comma splices. Let's get into this. Clause versus phrase with reference to comma splices. We'll get to the comma splices in a minute. We have two sentences up on the board here. I have a dog. Well, actually, I shouldn't say two sentences. One is a clause and one is a phrase. What is the difference between a clause and a phrase? We have the definition down below. Here's the definition of a clause. It is basically a subject and verb. Now, a subject is the person or thing doing the action, of course, and the verb is the action itself. A phrase can be defined as a group of words with no subject and verb. So having a look at the first one, I have a dog. If you have identified that as a clause, you are correct. One line for the subject. I, two lines for the verb have. Looking down below, my dog's nose. Well, that doesn't really make sense as an independent sentence. That's because it's not a clause. It has no subject, nor does it have a verb. So my dog's nose is a phrase, whereas I have a dog is a clause. Let's go further into that up on the blackboard. So as we know, a clause contains a subject and a verb. A phrase is a group of words with no subject or verb. Now, my uncle smokes. Here we go. Does it belong in the clause column or the phrase column? Can you identify a subject and a verb? Well, my uncle is a potential subject. Is smokes a verb? Yes, it is. Therefore, my uncle smokes qualifies as a clause. Now that you are clear, I hope, on the difference between a clause and a phrase, I would like to talk about something called comma splices, which is a thing in writing that you want to avoid. We'll get to the definition of a comma splice in a moment. First of all, have a look at A and B up on the board here. A, according to the news, a storm is coming. B, a storm is coming. We'd better prepare. One of these two sentences is incorrectly punctuated. Which one is it? If you'd like to take a moment to think about that, pause the video and come on back. Otherwise, we're going right through. Okay, I'm telling you now that B is the incorrect punctuation. We've just talked about clauses and phrases. Which of these two contains, A or B, which one contains two clauses? I'm hoping that you're looking at B. A storm is coming is a subject. Storm, verb is coming, present continuous. We had better prepare, subject. We prepare is the verb. Here's the definition of a comma splice, right down here. A comma splice is the use of a comma to join two clauses together. Don't do it. It is incorrect punctuation. B is incorrectly punctuated. You cannot use a comma to join together two clauses. That's a golden rule that always applies. However, you can use a comma to join together a phrase and a clause. That's quite all right. Now, why is it important to understand comma splices? Well, they come into SAT very, very heavily. So you do need to understand what a comma splice is. So remember, what is a clause? It's a subject and a verb. What is a phrase? It's a group of words with neither subject nor a verb. Let's go down to look at some examples of how to correct a comma splice. Here we have the comma splice. New York City has 5 boroughs. One of them is Manhattan. That's a comma splice. Why? Because we have two clauses joined together with a comma. New York City is the subject, has is the verb. One is the subject here, be verb is the verb. And how did we link them together? With a comma. That's a no-no. What is the name of this problem again? That's right. It's called a comma splice. Never use a comma splice in your writing. Now, here's correction method number 1. New York City has 5 boroughs, full stop or period, as they say in America. Capital letter, one of them is Manhattan. Basically, you can separate that into 2 sentences. Problem solved. Maybe you want 1 sentence. All right, correction 2. New York City has 5 boroughs, comma, and one of them is Manhattan. So you can use something called a conjunction. Problem solved. Correction 3. New York City has 5 boroughs, semicolon, one of them is Manhattan. In English, semicolons can link clauses together. Commas cannot. And here is correction 4. New York City has 5 boroughs, one of them being Manhattan. Now, what have I done here? Remember our discussion of phrases? A phrase is a group of words with neither a subject nor a verb. By changing is to being, I have successfully created a phrase structure here. Therefore, the comma is now correct. All right, why is any of this important? Comma splice is a very, very important concept that you have to understand in your own writing or in taking an SAT test. Now, the phrase structure is one way that you can join 2 pieces of information together with a comma. Coming down here to a question from the SAT, we can ignore the first sentence. We're going down to the sentence beginning known as the brass era. This period in automotive design is remembered for its grandeur and artistry. Note the comma, its vehicles gap. Now, I'm going to draw your attention to that comma. We already have a clause leading into that comma, the subject being this period, verb is remembered. All right. We've got a comma. That means the following information cannot be in a clause form, because if it is, it becomes a comma splice. So this is what a comma splice looks like when you boil it right down to its skeleton. Subject, verb, comma, subject, verb. That's a no-no. Avoid it at all times. Now, because we have a clause and a comma, the following information, as I've said, cannot be in clause form, but it can be in a phrase. Looking at A, are highly prized as a verb. That's out. B, had been highly prized, is also a verb form, out. C, highly prized looks like a verb, could also be an adjective. D, were highly prized. The only answer we can use here is prized. Now, you might be sitting at home thinking, but wait a minute, isn't prized a verb? It is, but it can also function as an adjective. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Before I do, let's do another example. Question 23 here. It's quite a long opening sentence. I'll read it through. Featuring jagged peaks of black ink surrounded by hazy swirls of blue and green paint. Oh, it's a long modifying phrase. But we finally get to the subject. Zhang Daqian's 1983 painting, Panorama of Mount Lu. Okay, so I want you to notice that comma there. We have the same situation we've just had. Now we already have a clause leading in, and the subject of the clause is Zhang Daqian's 1983 painting Panorama of Mount Lu. Long subject, but it's a subject nonetheless. Verb is inspired. It's a passive verb. We have a clause, ladies and gentlemen, and then we have a comma. Guess what you cannot use in the following section? You cannot use a clause, because if you do, you're creating a comma splice. A is out, has been characterized, it's a verb. B is out, will be characterized. D is out, is characterized. If you choose any of A, B, and D, you are creating a comma splice. So again, you may be sitting there thinking, but wait a minute, isn't characterized a verb? Well, it can be. It can also be an adjective. So I'm just going to discuss very briefly now a note on past participles as adjectives. What is a past participle? It's the third verb form. Go, went, gone. Gone is the past participle here. See, saw, seen. You need to understand neither prized nor characterized in the previous examples is a verb. So let's go back up here. Answer C, characterized is not a verb. Back up here, highly prized is not a verb. The reason they're not verbs is that they are past participles functioning as adjectives. If this is a confusing issue to you, I have a video on this as well. So it'll either be in the link down below or coming very shortly. Make sure you check out the video on past participles functioning as adjectives. But for now, that is our lesson on the difference between clauses and phrases and how they relate to comma splices. Well, you can see that a comma splice is a bad thing, but they are quite common, but easy fix. Easy fix as mentioned in the video. So make sure you do not get caught up in comma splices. Make sure you understand what they are. You have to know what a clause and a phrase is. I'm now hopeful that you know all these things, and your journey through the land of SAT becomes that much easier. Thank you for tuning in. Check out my next video on more obscure grammar. That's just what the SAT people do. See you then.